guys, Tracy here with another scrapbooking process video. This time I'm using the Drops of Jupiter kit and add-on, which is the March kit from the Scraptastic Kit Club. Hi guys, Tracy here, and I'm going to be scrapbooking this picture today of my daughter. And this is a couple of weeks ago. She's outside our house just getting ready to wait for the school bus to arrive. And I just snapped this shot of her because she looked like such a tomboy with her baseball hat and her I thought she looked kind of cool with her cello on her back. And so I wanted to scrapbook this as part of the 27-day challenge that I have running on YouTube. And I also have a Facebook group about the challenge. It's called MercyTiara's 27-day challenge, where each month we have a different challenge and the winner from the last month gets to choose the next month's challenge. So this month, Angela Blanchard, I think I pronounced her name right. I hope I did. She chose the theme to be Oh Boy, which is to scrapbook a masculine layout or a layout about a boy. And I only have daughters. And so I do have a husband to scrapbook, and I've scrapbooked about Headley. So I've done quite a few masculine themed layouts this month. But what I wanted to do is try to scrapbook a masculine themed layout but about a girl. And so this layout is going to be about my daughter Olivia, and about how it's, you know, we might have called her a tomboy a couple of years ago, but I don't think that we need to use those sorts of phrases anymore. We're lucky that our kids today, at least in this part of the world, are growing up in a world where they can wear whatever they want and not be typecast, or I don't think anybody would really call her a tomboy in her peer group, but she does tend to wear a lot of pants and baseball hats and sporty things instead of, she really does not like dresses and that sort of thing. So this layout is not only about her, but it's also about the world that she's growing up in and how it's very different than the world that I grew up in. So that's what this layout is going to be about. I'm going to use what's left of my Drops of Jupiter kit, which is the Scraptastic kit from March. And I already made 4 or 5 layouts with it, but I have lots of pages left over. So I'm going to use the papers and the embellishments from the Drops of Jupiter kit. I might dip into my stash as well. I have a few things that I would like to use up, but I'm not entirely sure. So that's just what I think about this one so far, and we will see what direction it goes. I have no idea of how the layout is going to be laid out, but it is a 4x6 picture, which is different than what I usually scrap. I've been scrapping almost exclusively Instagram pictures lately, and so this is a nice departure for me. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you up there. Okay, so here I am just looking through some of the papers that come with the Drops of Jupiter kit. Pardon me, I thought about using this pattern paper here for my background, just not for my background, but to mat this photo. And then I decided to go with this Jen Hadfield paper instead. I really like how dark it is, and I like how the blues, the navy blue really emphasizes the black and white nature of the photo. It has kind of blue undertones to it. So I liked how that looked. And then this is a piece of, what is this? I think it's Chamel. Yes, it is. It's Chamel from the Starshine collection. And I just used my ruler to tear it all the way around so that I had that nice little detail of the torn white edges on this all the way around it, the whole perimeter. And now I had spelled out the word trip for a Headley song earlier, and I didn't use those letters for that title, so I had to put some of them back, but I took the T and started off the word tomboy. And I put a question mark because I think that this is going to be called What is a Tomboy? But I also thought about just calling it Tomboy with a question mark, just to kind of introduce the idea of questioning this term that we've used to refer to girls who dress a certain way. I was called a tomboy when I was growing up. I didn't take offense to it at all, but I've noticed that nobody comments on the way that Olivia dresses. She dresses just the way that I did, and nobody calls her a tomboy. In fact, nobody comments at all on what she wears, which is kind of refreshing and nice. So I'm just using my Cutter Bee scissors here to cut all the way around this little cloud cluster. This was really an afterthought, but I think that this part of the layout completely makes the layout. I think without this, this, it would not look as nice at all. So this is the back side of that green and blue diagonally striped Chamel Starshine paper, and after I tore off my big chunk and was ready to use it, I noticed that amongst the scraps this really nice cluster of clouds was left. So I thought, I'm going to cut that out and see if I can use it on my layout, and I'm so glad that I did. It was not what I was planning to do with this layout at all. I mean, I didn't really have a plan, but I really like the direction that this went in. Now, this is Scotch mounting tape. It's actually, I don't think it's a scrapbooking supply. You can get it at Kent or Home Depot or whatever. It's for mounting things on the wall, I believe. I'm not entirely sure. It's basically double-sided foam tape. And so I can't guarantee that it is acid-free because I don't think it's a scrapbooking supply. So if that's a concern to you, I would just double check that. I'm just writing down my supplies there on my ingredient form that helps me to narrate my videos. If you're interested in that, I always leave a link to it in my process videos. So now I'm thinking I need a color besides blue and green on this, and I love blue, green, and orange as, actually I like blue and orange as a great color scheme for masculine layouts. So I thought I would use that. It's probably my favorite color scheme is blue, green, and orange for a boy layout. So I thought I would just use that same color scheme here for my layout about Olivia. And I grabbed that chevron orange paper. Even though it has a cream base and I'm using those white letters, I was a little hesitant to use that pattern paper, but I decided to go for it anyways, and it turns out that enough of it is covered up that it doesn't quite matter. I'm just looking at the embellishments that come in the kit and deciding where I'm going to put them, and also deciding on just which ones are relevant and picking some ones that go with the theme that I'm going for. I want to stay away from pinks because, again, I want this to be a masculine looking layout. So my color scheme of green, blue, and orange is what I want to focus on. Thought about using some stamps, but you guys know I'm just not good at using stamps on layouts. I always think about it at the beginning, but then I always forget by the end. I need some way to remember to use them because there's so many beautiful stamps in the kits. So now I've decided to go ahead and put the what's as part of this title. I initially thought I might just call it Tomboy with a question mark, but just to make it a little bit more clear. And so my problem is that I don't have a T. So I'm taking an L and putting it upside down, and then I'm just going to take the straight part, the short straight part off of this Z. And it's too long that way, so I just had to trim it down a little bit. And now, just so that the two spaces on the end of on each edge, so that the two pieces on either side of that extended vertical piece are exactly the same size. That's what I'm trying to say. So now it's not very readable on top of that chevron paper, and I really like my titles to stand out and to not blend in with the background paper. So I'm thinking about using these tags, but as they're really nice tags. They're exclusive to the kits, and I really like them, but they're just not going to hold up to the other things that are going on in this layout. They're too thin, like they're obviously thin, they're obviously stickers, and I want them to look less like stickers and more like actual shipping tags. So I stuck them onto the craft cardstock that came in the kit, and I'm just cutting around it in such a way that I'm leaving a very, very thin border. And I'm going to talk to you about this in just a second. So first I'm going to just check and make sure that it's going to fit. And it does look like it's going to fit right there. I think that's perfect. And I've decided to move the orange paper over a little bit so that some of it extends over there to the left of the what's and to the left of those tags. That just extends that design from one side of the layout to the other. So I've just matted these two tag stickers that came in the kit. I just matted them on craft cardstock that also came in the kit, just to give them, first of all, to make them not so sticky so that I can kind of decide where to put them, but it also just gives them this little bit of brown trim around the edges of them. I like how it just kind of gives them a little bit more substance and makes them more solid and less thin. It's a little bit tricky finding a hole punch that is the right size for these. Clearly my regular office hole punch is not going to be the right size, but it's pretty close. So I'm going to go ahead and use that one. It gives another nice little kind of outline around the edges of it. And then the other thing that I wanted to point out to you guys is that, is that when you have something like this that has that little rounded inside, it's almost like reverse rounded, so a rounded corner would go out like this, but this goes in like that. You can take your hole punch to get that look on almost anything and just take a quarter out of it, just like that. And that gives it a nice smooth look that you probably wouldn't get if you were trying to cut it out with your fussy cutting scissors. So that's just a little tip for the little reverse rounding. To use your regular office hole punch works for that. Then I have pieced together the T here using an upside down L, and then I took a little straight part off of the letter Z. I often use the letter Z for experiments because I don't use the letter Z. I don't have any people in my life who have a Z in their names, so, and it's not a letter that I use very often. So that's what I have. What's and then Tomboy, and I'm thinking about layering them like this. So let's go back to the process. So of course I'm going to put, that's a 1/4 inch hole punch, which is a standard hole punch that you get at the office supply center. And I'm just grabbing some twine from my stash. Of course, I am going to stick those tags under behind the photo. And so you're actually not going to see those rounded corners, but I just wanted to point out, even though I'll be covering them up, because I wasn't sure if everybody knows about that tip. So I'm just sticking both the blue and green twine and the orange and white twine through the holes and just looping it around to make like a shipping tag type of scenario. And that blue and green twine that I got is actually some of the twine that they tie up your Lawn Fawn order when you order some stamps and dies from Lawn Fawn. So I always hang on to that because it's so cute. And it's a nice sturdy baker's twine. So I thought I would get rid of some of the distracting background papers that were getting in the way there for you guys. So I just cleaned up my desk a little bit. And then I decided to cut out one more of the clouds that was left on that scrap paper. I actually had a whole other piece of that paper, but I didn't realize it. I thought this was the last that I had. So I was looking for another cloud to maybe layer with that one cloud, but then it looked like I didn't have any more. It wasn't until I was cleaning up after I was finished the layout that I realized that I had a whole other uncut sheet of that cloud paper from the Chamel Starshine collection. So here I have all of these die cuts from the Chamel Starshine collection that came in the kit, and I'm thinking about just kind of layering them in a staggered way so that they are just kind of overlapping each other and each one touches another one, and just to add some visual interest over to the right of the photo. So I'm going to play around a little bit with how to do that. And this is the general shape that I'm going to keep, but the whole thing is going to have to shift down a little bit. And then I thought I'd bring some more of that orange and cream colored paper up to the top just to repeat that up in my little cluster that will be up there. And then I took that Take Note collection, that Take Note clear sticker from the Heidi Swap stickers that came in the kit, and I just put it on one of the journaling cards. And I'm using more of that 3M tape. It's a lot easier than using a ton of pop dots because you can tear off a pretty big strip if you want to. So there we go. I decided to layer that boot. I thought that boot was really, really cute, and it's the kind of shoes that Olivia loves. So I thought I would put that on this layout, and I layered it on the tag. And then I'm popping up some of these elements, but not all of them. So the ones that are on top, I'm popping up, and the ones that are layered beneath, I'll just use regular adhesive to put it on. And I wanted to put a string around this tag as well, but I'm just going to tie a little knot instead of putting it on the shipping tag way. And so this embellishment is actually going to be popped up quite a bit because the tag itself is on pop dots and then the boot also is on pop dots. So I grabbed a picture just so that I could remember how everything was laid out, and I'm going to take off my layers and put them all back on with glue. And I'm referring to the photo as I do this, just to make sure that I'm putting the papers in the places that I had already decided I wanted them to be. Of course, my photo is too far over. I need to leave room for that title. There we go. So I figured out how I wanted those tags to layer, and then I just used a staple to keep them in place. I used my tiny attacher there. And I'm going to stick it like that. And then I also put a couple of pop dots in behind two of the corners of the shipping tags. And I made sure that a little bit of that orange pattern paper was showing at the bottom of the shipping tags, just to continue that pattern from one side to the other side. I didn't want the little bit on the left of the shipping tags to be floating. I wanted it to seem connected to the other piece of paper. So leaving a little strip of the orange pattern going right underneath of those shipping tags just allows it kind of keeps that continuity in place for your eye to pick up on. Pardon me. So now I have to just move that question mark up a little bit higher. And in order to do that, I had to move the Y over. I don't want the question mark to hang off the edge of that pattern paper. I want it to all be contained within the pattern. And I'm going to situate this so that the T is on the first shipping tag, and then the apostrophe S and the A is on the shipping tag that's behind. And these letter stickers are from Heidi Swapp, and then the white ones are thickers. They're called Thick and Thin, and I love them. They're really cool. And then that Imagine word sticker from the Heidi Swapp stickers just fits so perfectly on that blue cloud in the front. And I just love it. It looks very cloud-like, actually. If you look at the shiny part of it, it looks like a little cloud layered in front of the other clouds. And I just used my ATG to attach that blimp to the background paper so that it looks like it's kind of coming out from behind the clouds like that. So I'm just going to refer back to my photo so that I can place all of these embellishments in the places that I had originally anticipated I would put them. And so I'm putting this Shine Your Light over top of the constellation. I know I'm covering a good part of that constellation, which is really cute because it looks like a heart. But I'm trying to make sure that the phrase still shows. So the phrase says, find your... Oh, I covered it. Find your path. I covered it in the end after all. Anyhow, yeah, so I'm just kind of layering them all together. And at first I had them spread out quite a bit more, but when I went to glue them down, I decided to scooch them so that they're all overlapping quite a bit more than they originally were, which means that less of the orange paper shows, but that's okay because I think the orange paper was a little bit distracting when it was showing in between those embellishments. So I like them all overlapping and layered the way that they ended up being in the end. So I just want them to all begin and end at different places just to add a little bit of interest to the layout and to not make them look too lined up. I'm going to stick those balloons. Now those balloons, one of them is a little pink, and I would have liked to not have any pink at all on this layout, but then the shoe has some pink in it too, so I thought, oh, it's okay if there's... And I really, really, really wanted the shoe on there because it is such a Olivia shoe. So there we go. Everything is all stuck down now. And I'm just thinking about what other stickers or embellishments I might want to put on. So I decided to put 4 of these little scribbly stars that come on the sticker set by Heidi Swapp. I'm going to put them in 4 different places here. There we go. I thought about putting some of these circle stickers on there too, but I changed my mind. I'm just going to lay this arrow so that it's pointing at the tag. I moved it and it ended up not... I liked it in the original place, so I ended up putting it back. So... there we go. And I thought about putting some of those Heidi Swapp words on there, but I don't want it to be too girly, and those are nice gold foil and they seem a little too feminine. So I want this word soar, but I'm going to put it up in the top with that cloud that's up there. I think the word soar being up in the sky is very appropriate, so that's where I'm going to put it. And now here comes the kerfuffle. So first of all, I'm looking for some enamel dots because some came with the kit and I wanted to put them on the layout. But what I'm looking for right now is, first I'm going to cut that paper so that it was square. It was a little bit too triangular looking, so I wanted to square it off. So before the kerfuffle that I just mentioned, I'm going to put the word soar on here. So I'm layering a couple of different pieces of Stampin' Up! Foam embellishments, or not foam embellishment, foam tape. So these are called dimensional adhesive. And I'm just cutting the little edges so that, because you get tinier pieces if you cut up the little edges, and I'm putting them in the top and on the bottom. And then I'm going to make it so that, because that cloud is already pop dotted with the Scotch foam tape, so I put double layers on the bottom and single layers on the top so that the soar is going to stand out from the cloud, but both the cloud and the word soar are going to stand out from the background cardstock. So it just took me a few minutes to get that all sorted out. And there it is. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to glue that down before I move on to my very last step, which is an embellishment that I need to make. So this layout, it just felt like it was missing a little something. It just didn't feel finished, but I couldn't really think of anything else to put on it that came in the kit. And I remembered that I have a bow die that makes a really cute bow. And so I'm going to go and look for my bow in my not in my stamps, but in my dies. And you're going to notice that my bow die is not in my box of dies. Oh, I'm crushed. I'm thinking, wait a minute, where is it? It's got to be in here. So I have a feeling that I took out my bow die and put it someplace special where I wouldn't forget to use it. And now I don't know where it's at, which I'm so disappointed about. Oh, I wanted to use it so much. But at some point I like looked all over the place. I turned off the camera and looked everywhere. At some point I had to just give up. So I decided what I'm going to do instead, because I really had my heart set on a bow. So I'm just going to, first of all, I need to just see if this is even going to work. So I want to make it, since I'm not using the die, I might as well make it the size that I want. So I wanted it to be a little bit bigger than the bows that come from the die. So I'm tracing the die, and you see I did a really rough job here, and that's because this is my prototype. I'm just going to quickly whip up a bow as quickly as I possibly can, and I'm just going to test it for size on my layout and make sure that it is the right scale for what I want to add. So I'm playing around with the idea of putting some foam tape inside to keep the three-dimensional look of it, but that actually ends up making the paper get bent too much. So I'm not going to do that with once I actually make it. So again, I'm just cutting out the base, and the two will layer like that. And it actually looks pretty good. Even roughly cut, it looks pretty decent, eh? So I'm playing around with where to put it, and that is the place that I had intended to put it, right above the Find Your Path. And so now I'm going to make it a little bit more slowly so that it will actually look good. And because I'm kind of winging it, the measurements of this bow are really strange, and I end up having to half things and quarter things that are not easily halved and quartered. So I ended up just kind of eyeballing it and using my grid mat to center everything so that I'm taking halves and quarters. You're going to see me make it here, but I'm not going to give you detailed instructions on how to make it yourself, because I'm just going to make a separate video where I'll just adjust the measurements a little bit so that it's easier, and using round numbers and stuff, because it's a bit of a nightmare the way that I did it is kind of silly. But I mean, that's just because I was working off the top of my head. I was so frustrated that I lost my die. I'm still mad that I lost my die. And it was a gift from somebody, which makes it even worse. So you see how I'm centering? I'm just picking a line on my grid mat to be my center line, and then I'm just centering it around it, just using my eyeballs, so you can just kind of look at, how many squares are on each side of the center, and center it off that way. And then I'm taking the quarter, so I kind of divided it in half lengthwise, and then I divided each of those halves into half, and then I made a couple of other marks there. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to freehand cut this. So I'm just kind of using these little marks as my landmarks for freehand cutting. And this is the base, so this just looks like that, and there's the base, and I'll put flags on either end of it, but I think I do that at the end. So, and I end up kind of writing some things down, and it's not actually going to work that way. So just ignore what I'm writing here, and I will give you a better tutorial for this. And also, because I'm Canadian, 16ths and 8ths and 32s, my brain just doesn't work that way. I can never remember which of those little tick marks are which, and so I always have to count to figure out what I'm dealing with. Oh, it's embarrassing how non-mathematically oriented I am. But anyhow, so I figured it out, and I'm writing stuff down here, and that's just for my own purposes so that I can do a tutorial later on. So keep an eye out for on my channel for that tutorial. And once I have my markings, I'm just going to freehand cut using them as guidelines, and I will explain in a little bit more detail if it's not obvious when I do that tutorial. But basically, I end up with a shape that is pretty much the same. I mean, it's pretty close, and I'm going to tweak it a little bit here. I'm just making some notes here so that my tutorial version of this bow will look even better than this bow, which I'm making right here. And now I kind of prematurely stapled it there because now I have to also staple it onto the background. I mean, I could have used a glue dot or some hot glue or something. You want to use really, really strong glue for this. And then I was going to put a little tiny bow in the middle. And then I thought, this nice, not a bow, but a little tiny heart in the middle. But then I thought this nice big heart would look even better. I thought about actually stapling it on. And so I used the green heart because I don't really care for that large green heart, just as a test to see if you could staple through an enamel dot. And nope, you can't. So don't try to staple through an enamel dot. You will scratch the enamel dot and the stapler will not go through. So there you go. You learned from my mistakes. So I'm glad that I didn't staple that. So what I did instead was I used 2 small glue dots to hold that heart in place. And then I put a piece of foam adhesive on the back center of the bow. And then I used my ATG to tape the 2 ends of the bow down to my layout. Now the final touches of this layout are just to add these enamel dots all over the layout in various places. And I really like how this looks. So then I thought, and this was a last minute thought because I was thinking, okay, now where am I going to put my journaling? And I thought, that light blue cloud there is just a perfect place to put some journaling. And I thought, for once, I would really like it if my journaling looked nice, because you guys know, if you follow my channel, that I often comment on how my journaling always either is spaced differently at the top than it is at the bottom. It's never even and nice and spread out and planned looking. So I decided I'm going to actually draw out my little lines and then pre-write my journaling in very, very faint. I didn't press very hard at all in pencil. And now I'm just going right over it with my Pitt pen. Part of the reason that I love these Faber-Castell Pitt pens is that they have India ink inside of them, as opposed to some other kinds of ink markers that I've used. When you go over it with eraser, even if it's dry, the eraser will smear it a little bit. But Faber-Castell Pitt pens, they're not the only pen, but they're one of the pens that does not smear when you go over it with eraser. So it looks just as crisp after I've erased over it as it did before I went over it with the eraser. So here it is, just the close-ups of it. I really love how the journaling turned out. Hooray! It turned out nice for once. I'm so pleased. And I also really like how this cluster of embellishments look. The colors are so cute. I love this kit so much, and I love that I was able to use this masculine color scheme of blue, green, and orange, and also all of these masculine type of embellishments, like with the starship and all those, and lots of stars and things that we often will choose for boys, and use it on my layout about my wonderful daughter. So here are some of the close-ups for this layout. Check out my Flickr if you want to see them in detail, or pin them to remember to scrap lift them, or whatever you want to do with it. And make sure that if you're interested in playing along with the Oh Boy challenge, that you check out my Facebook group and also the original challenge video, which I will link in the information section for this one. So take care and have a really great scrappy week.